West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte colère.
Popular commentator 4 weeks ago that I talked to that told me flat out, before they knew any of the contents of the bill, nothing was out at that point, that told me flat out, if you try to move a bill that solves the border crisis during this presidential year, I will do whatever I can to destroy you. Because I do not want you to solve this during the presidential election.
That was Oklahoma's right-wing Republican Senator James Lankford on the Senate floor today, describing the rage he has faced from Trump fanatics because he actually tried to fix a problem that Donald Trump says is killing 300,000 Americans a year, which, of course, is a typical Trump lie about the dangers of our southern border. The other thing that Republicans have proved is a lie is the idea that Republicans want to fix the border problems. They negotiated a bipartisan Senate bill that strengthens security at the southern border and is endorsed by the Border Patrol Union. And then Donald Trump ordered Republicans not to vote for the bill they had negotiated because Donald Trump doesn't want the southern border to be fixed on Joe Biden's watch. Our next guest, Senator Jon Tester, said it is shameful that politicians in Washington have once again chosen to play politics with our border and put our national security at risk. Senator Tester is running for re-election in Montana, where a new Republican candidate is entering the race, Congressman Matt Rosendale, who joined the Republican chorus in the House of Representatives saying that they would vote against the Senate bill securing the border if it passed the Senate and came to the House. Every Republican who has announced opposition to the Senate bill has revealed that they have never for a single day of their lives been serious about their exaggerated threats of danger at the southern border or their promises to fix it. It was all a lie. Jon Tester beat Matt Rosendale for that Senate seat once before in 2018. Joining us now is Montana's senior senator, Jon Tester, Democrat running for re-election in the United States Senate. Senator, I saw that email you sent out today. I'm sick of this BS. Looked pretty angry. I can't imagine what it is like to be in that chamber on a day like today, when a negotiated piece of legislation to secure the southern border is in effect blocked by Republicans who were part of the negotiation. I've never seen anything like it. Just never seen it.
Look, Lawrence, you covered it very, very well. People sent me here from Montana to actually fix problems, not to play politics. It's the last thing they want. We got Republicans, we got Democrats, but the fact is we're all Americans. And when I go back home to Montana, I hear from everybody, from families to sheriffs to Border Patrol folks, that we need to fix this border. We need to know who's coming across the border. So the negotiations went on for 4 months. It was a price to get the dollars for Ukraine, and came up with a deal. And look, it wasn't a deal that I written, but I think it's a pretty doggone good deal. I think the deal that Langford and Murphy and Sinema came up with is pretty darn good. It puts more manpower on the border, net technology, changes the asylum rules. It's a good, thoughtful presentation. And we've had folks running all over our state and running all over the country. Well, I've been down at the border. It's horrible. It's terrible. Well, let's fix it. We had an opportunity to fix it today. And the same folks who are talking about what a horrible situation's on the border, and I agree, we need to fix it, voted against fixing it. Why? Because they want it as a campaign issue. When this town becomes more about Democrats and Republicans than it does about the American people, it just shows you how badly broken Congress is. And I will tell you, it is unbelievably ridiculous what transpired today, where James Langford was hung out to dry by his own party. They told him to go out and fix this. He did it, worked in good faith, along with Murphy and Sinema, in good faith, came up with a deal, and they pulled the rug out from under him. It's ridiculous. We had a chance to fix this problem. We saw it in 2013 with a border bill that failed because they pulled the rug out from underneath it. Again in 2018, and now in 2024. This isn't about fixing the problems in this country by some that serve in the Senate. It's about making sure they got issues out there that they can run on and show everything that's dysfunctional about this country. The fact is, I hope the American people understand what's transpired today. What transpired today is political malpractice. These folks could have fixed the problem, and they chose not to because they want to keep it as a political issue.
You are a border state. You're a northern border state. Do people in your state feel threatened by the southern border, or is it their sense of a national purpose that they don't feel specifically threatened by it, but it needs to be solved as a national issue?
Look, I think it's both. I think they want to know who's coming across that border. I think it's incumbent on our national security to know who's coming across that border. The only way you do that is make the investment in manpower and technology. That's why the Border Patrol folks are in favor of this. They understand we need more manpower on that southern border. You combine that with the asylum, and it solves the problem. And Montanans would say, thank you. Thank you for solving this problem. But this very same people who have been down on the southern border saying this is a catastrophe now say, no, we don't want to fix it. And it's just, I got to tell you, it's the epitome of craziness. And we ought to, I don't know what to say. How do you fix this place? It's badly broken, and the American people shouldn't put up with it.
And the members of the House who opposed it were opposing it before they knew a word that was in the bill.
100% correct. It's a little over 300 pages. It's not a hard read, but a person ought to read it. And in that vein, Lawrence, I will tell you, we ought to, at a bare minimum, taken this bill to the floor and debated it. Had the opportunity to debate the bill and make changes on the bill, but that wasn't even acceptable. And so you're right. I mean, folks are talking about 5,000 people coming across the border. That's hogwash. That's not in the bill. That is hogwash. They're talking about the fact that Biden can do all these things without the bill. That's hogwash too. The truth is we need this bill in this country so that we can secure our border, and we should have passed it, or we should at least got on it to debate it today.
Senator Jon Tester, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
It is Thursday, the 8th of February of 2024, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. Precious, our little Yorkie, is the door girl, and she will be seating you directly for our especially special daily special, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. Well, how are you today, huh? We've got quite a bit on our plate, and of course the Supreme Court hearing into Donald Trump's eligibility to be running for office again is underway. So if you're listening now, well, it might just be that you're listening to a pod because I really don't expect people to be listening to the show in its regular time slot. But if you are, that's fine. And if you want to turn on the TV or whatever other device that you have to listen to the hearing as this show is going on, feel free. Alrighty, so a couple of things on my mind as we start out. Oh, I should remind folks that I will be going to Southern California over the weekend for my dad's 96th birthday. And so we here at Netroots Radio will have a mix of robot radio, where I'll just turn on the Progressive Voices channel and pick up their programming. And, of course, we'll have interspersed some of our regular programming, as well as some other tidbits slotted in here and there to get us through the weekend. So Monday, we will not have a show here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And I get in, well, I wouldn't say late, but because of the weather, we don't know if there's going to be any delays. But I shouldn't be getting back home until about 9 p.m., which is a bit late around these neck of the woods. Anyway, so it's uncertain whether I'll have an actual show here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy on Tuesday next. So we may have instead a clip show or something, but we will be back and pretty much doing what we have to do late Monday night, and we'll see what we're going to do for a show on Tuesday. And that would be the, what would that be? That would be the, where are we? Yeah, that'd be the 13th. There you go, 13th. All right, so wow, I started to mention that I had a couple of things on my mind as we begin here. And one of those is this televised beatdown of a Hispanic guy in New York live on Fox with Hannity as he was interviewing that guardian angel guy, Silva. Now, we've known for a long time that the guardian angels are pretty much a brown shirt thug group, and they proved that quite adeptly last night live on TV. There was no cutaway from the attack. In fact, the cameraman turned his camera around and watched the attack take place, while the brown guy had a hood on and listening to something. He had some earbuds in. And he's pretty much telling these guys to get their hands off of him. And who wouldn't? Bunch of guys in red berets start manhandling you. And what was this guy's great crime? To have them identify him as an illegal migrant on live TV. Apparently he was speaking Spanish in his phone, so maybe he wasn't listening to the radio. He was listening or talking to somebody on the phone. Speaking Spanish. And of course Silva said, oh yeah, well, we've seen this guy speaking Spanish to other people. We've had him on our radar. Have you? You mean like a brown shirt thug? So they manhandled this guy on live TV. Turns out he's a resident of the Bronx. Some people are saying that he's a migrant, but actually, from more reporting, not by me, but it has been reported, he was born here. But I guess that doesn't mean anything if you're speaking Spanish and you happen to be a brown guy. My brother-in-law, who is Hispanic, born here, worked for UPS. He's retired now from UPS. But back in the 80s, when Wilson, what was it, Duke Machin? Well, regardless, I think it was Wilson, created what we call the El Segunda Linea. It was a border stop about 20 miles north of the border. Why would they have that? Well, for show. So my brother-in-law got pulled over on the 405 while delivering packages near Laguna Niguel. On the 405, got pulled over, could not present his green card because he didn't need one. He's an American citizen. They determined that his license was not enough, so they handcuffed his ass, left the truck by the side of the freeway, open, by the way. They wouldn't even let him lock it. And they hauled his ass across the border. We had no idea where he was because this is back before cell phones. They see his truck on the side of the freeway open without vents. Where is he? Well, he was quickly able to, once over the border, was able to contact my sister, and then my sister got the authorities involved, which meant my dad. Then my dad put stuff into effect. And it wasn't a pretty lawsuit, but it was one nonetheless. So this is what happens. Anybody is going to get pulled over by these brown shirt thugs. We already have a long history of it, and now it's going to be exaggerated, and we got the richest man in the world on his platform spreading these great replacement propaganda lies. Boy, are we in for a big work ahead of us. Big work. Indeed we are. All right, what do we have in store for you here as we're going to get right into these offerings and not go too far into a big rant. Let's see. Okay, well, at the top, yes, Republicans committed political malpractice when they blocked the bipartisan border bill. And why did they do that? Well, you know why. On the rest of the menu, a suburban Seattle, Washington gun shop will pay $3 million for selling high-capacity ammunition magazines despite a state ban. A judge has thrown out a lawsuit that sought to block the University of California from renaming the former Hastings College of the Law. Of course, Hastings was a slave owner, and he killed a lot of Indians, and he bragged about it. And billionaire NFL owners are complaining the San Francisco 49ers are benefiting too much from hiring people of color. Well, I expect Elon and others to start posting how terrible DEI is in the NFL. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where former Czech populist Prime Minister Andrej Babis lost his appeal in Slovakia over allegations that he collaborated with the communist-era Czechoslovakian secret police. And the European Union launched a legal action against Hungary over a new law that allows authorities to investigate and prosecute critics of the right-wing government. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln, and we thank her for doing so. Across the page to the left from that chat room link, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, it really helps us pay our bills. And how would you become a recurring Patreon? Well, if you could afford to send us what you might spend on, well, I don't know, how about an espresso type coffee drink once a month? If you could buy us an espresso once a month, that would really help, because you would be sending those funds to us instead of actually, getting the coffee. But if you sent those funds to us once a month, thus becoming a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, it indeed does help us put a big dent in our bills, and they are ever increasing, darn them. But thank you to those of you who have been doing so all these many years, and also welcome to those of you who have just begun to become recurring Patreons, and also a hearty welcome back to those of you who have re-upped your recurring patronage here from the past, and now it's the present. Thank you. All right. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, Mastodon, Spoutable, well, wherever, you can do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that and a lot more. And I should mention, and I have been lately, that we all take care of Facebook. But thank you, Tom, for everything that you do. Follow me on all those social media platforms, including Facebook, Tumblr, Instagram. What else? They're all over the place. You can follow me on most everywhere at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's 10 minutes before showtime, and you can access those diaries rather quickly if you follow my social media feed, because the links to the diaries are right there. Okay. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, even Audible now. Wow. Okay. Pick them up. And really, wherever podcasts can be found, and they're ubiquitous. They're everywhere. Most everywhere except on Spreaker. Remember that? Yeah. I'm still upset about it. Oh, well. Okay, this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy actually comes through the Oregon Public Broadcasting webpage, but they picked it up from the AP staff, and I went to look for it on the AP and was not able to find it right away, so we'll just go with the OPB posting. A suburban Seattle gun shop and its former owner will pay $3 million for selling high-capacity ammunition magazines despite a state ban, the Washington Attorney General said. Attorney General Bob Ferguson announced the settlement with Federal Way Discount Guns and Mohammed Bagay after a King County judge found last year that the store and the former owner were in violation of Washington's Consumer Protection Act. The store and Bagay sold thousands of the magazines that can hold more than 10 rounds of ammunition after the state law banning them went into effect in 2022. Ferguson said the former owner kept selling them even after the state filed a lawsuit. The Attorney General described the violation as egregious and brazen. Federal Way Discount Guns chose to violate a critical law aimed at combating mass shootings, Ferguson said in a statement. Washington businesses are following the law and stopped selling high-capacity magazines. This resolution provides accountability for someone who flagrantly violated the law. A person who answered the phone at Federal Way Discount Guns declined to comment. Of course they would. Begay also declined to comment. Of course he would. When reached by phone by the Seattle Times, since the lawsuit, the store has been sold to Begay's son Andrew. Well, that's one way to keep it at arm's length. The store's website includes a link seeking fundraising for donations that will help us to continue to stand up against Bob Ferguson and his team's aggression as they relentlessly go after our Second Amendment rights. You fools. In this reporter's opinion, of course. Let's see, since July of 2022, it has been illegal under Washington state law to manufacture, distribute, sell, or offer for sale gun magazines that hold more than 10 rounds of ammunition, with limited exceptions. Supporters of the bill said at the time the law could reduce the carnage seen in mass shootings because people could have the chance to escape or stop a shooter in the time it takes to reload the weapon. We're at that point. Well, the shop had argued in King County Superior Court filings that Begay did not brazenly disregard the ban and instead listened to law enforcement officials who told him the ban was unconstitutional and therefore would not be enforced. Well, the federal way discount guns case was the first lawsuit filed by the Attorney General's office over violations of the law. Under the consent decree, Federal Way Discount Guns and the former owner have agreed to pay $3 million. The Attorney General's office will recoup about $1 million it spent litigating the case, while Ferguson said he expected the remaining $2 million will go to law enforcement agencies on the local level for efforts to reduce gun violence. Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A judge has thrown out a lawsuit that sought to block the University of California from renaming the former Hastings College of the Law because its namesake was linked to the slaughter of Native Americans. Descendants of Serenus Hastings filed the $1.7 billion breach of contract lawsuit over the decision to change the name to the University of California College of the Law, San Francisco, which took effect last year. Superior Court Judge Richard Ulmer ruled that an 1878 law that said the school shall forever be known by Hastings' name was not a binding contract and could be amended or repealed. Ulmer also rejected a claim that the change violated the state's constitutional requirement that the University of California remain free of all political or sectarian influence. A lawyer for the plaintiff said the ruling will be appealed. Hastings was a healthy rancher and former Chief Justice of the California Supreme Court. He founded and funded the law school, which graduates include Vice President Kamala Harris and former California Assemblyman Mayor Willie Brown. Oh, let's link those two up together. Okay, thank you. But historians say Hastings helped orchestrate and finance campaigns by white settlers in Mendocino County to kill and enslave members of the Yuki tribe at a time when California had legalized lynch mob attacks on natives, along with kidnapping and forced servitude in what some state leaders openly called a war of extermination. The expeditions arranged by Hastings resulted in the deaths of 300 Yuki, and the government reimbursed them for expenses, including ammunition. The attacks were part of a 3-year series of slaughters and kidnappings by settlers, known as the Round Valley Settler Massacres, that, by some estimates, claimed at least 1,000 native lives. The school began to investigate Hastings' legacy in 2017, and later requested the state pass a law permitting the name change, which took effect last year. Hernandez of the San Francisco Chronicle brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. NFL owners are unhappy with how the San Francisco 49ers have benefited from hiring people of color into coaching and executive positions, according to ESPN's Seth Wickersham. The detail is buried in a profile of Niners head coach Kyle Shanahan that was published on Wednesday yesterday. While the tidbit is meant to highlight Shanahan's keen eye for talent within the context of the paragraph it's in, it instead showcases a frustration within the league's billionaire class. We know he can hire well and diverse. In fact, owners have complained to the league office about the sheer number of compensatory picks the 49ers have received for serving as a pipeline for coaches and executives of color, Wickersham wrote. The Niners had the maximum amount of compensatory picks in the 2023 NFL Draft with 7. 3 of those, all third-round selections, were awarded because the NFL's minority hiring incentive. It's a process that began in 2020 in which the NFL awards teams will award teams picks for losing minority coaches or top executives to another team. Over the past 3 seasons, the Niners have lost Robert Saleh, Mike McDaniel, DeMeco Ryans, Martin Mayhew, and Ron Carthorne. The first 3 got head coaching jobs of their own after their respective tenures as 49ers coordinators, and the last 2 left for executive positions after a time in San Francisco's front office. It's no surprise, then, that the 3 the team got last year was the maximum allowed under the NFL's policy. And the Niners shown they're quite good at finding diamonds in the rough. Rising star and final selection of the 2022 NFL Draft, Brock Purdy, came through a compensatory pick, as did all-pro safety Talona Hufanga and linebacker Dre Greenlaw. Not all of them hit. Rookie kicker Jake Moody was selected with one of last year's compensatory picks, but having more shots at finding hidden talent than other teams is a huge advantage to have. Well, darn. But this is about more than just that advantage. The owners are not complaining about how San Francisco got Brock Purdy after quarterback C.J. Beathard left. They're specifically mad at the Niners for benefiting from, quite frankly, a Band-Aid solution to the NFL's systemic hiring problems. After all, it's rather incongruous that a league with mostly black talent does not have proportional representation in positions of power. Last year's total of 6 minority head coaches was celebrated by the NFL, despite that number still representing less than a quarter of the 32 jobs. When the league passed this policy more than 3 years ago, the goal was to help minority mobility for jobs that people of color have historically been kept out of. Since only one team is truly benefiting from that plan, at least in the eyes of ownership, it's now a problem for everyone else. The fact that owners are choosing to complain about a small fix to the big problem, rather than finding ways to receive the benefits they could also receive, says a lot about where their values are, and they're not with the people of color trying to make it in the league. Indeed. All right, that takes us to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American Science Quickly. I'm Jeff Del Vicio. Quantum and cryptography. Those two words might strike fear in the minds of the uninitiated. But in February's issue of Scientific American, we have a story about how they're colliding. Here to walk us through it is Kelsey Houston Edwards. Kelsey's a mathematician and journalist. She formerly wrote and hosted the online show PBS Infinite Series. And she wrote this month's story called Tomorrow's Quantum Computers Threaten Today's Secrets. Here's how to protect them. Welcome to Science Quickly, Kelsey.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, let's jump right into this mathematical quantum tension. How is quantum computing an issue for cryptography?
So cryptography is the art of sending messages in a way that someone in between cannot read them, that only the sender and receiver can read them. And there are essentially two different ways that this is done right now. And the first one is a sender and receiver have the same key, and they use that key to lock and unlock a box. And the message is securely locked in the box in between. The problem with this type of cryptography is that the sender and receiver of the secret message need to have the same key beforehand. It doesn't work if the sender and receiver have never spoken before. So if you want to securely send your credit card information to maybe a clothing store online that you have no prior contact with, you don't have that secret key with them. You need to use something that's called public key cryptography that's done entirely in the open, and it's always done between two parties with no prior communication. And that type of cryptography, at the heart of it, are very hard math problems. And quantum computers, if they were big enough, could solve these very hard math problems. If a quantum computer were to solve the very hard math problems that are at the heart of public key cryptography, then the cryptography wouldn't work. It wouldn't be secure anymore. And we rely on it to send information in many, many, many contexts in the modern world.
I think on that point about using it to send information, this public key cryptography, it's kind of an invisible system for most people. You don't think about it. You mentioned, making a purchase at an online clothing store. How deeply does encryption go? Like what kinds of systems, is it all data basically?
Public key cryptography is all over the place. It is in many, many, many systems that you use every single day. But I think most cryptographers would tell you that if cryptography is working well, you don't know that it's happening. It's happening behind the scenes. And if everything goes well, you will never know what is happening. It's only when cryptography fails that we really hear about it. So, for example, every time that you start an online transaction with your bank or anywhere else that's secure, many other kind of video messaging services, things like that, every time you start it, they're going to do a public key cryptography transaction, essentially. And they're going to exchange this private information in a public way. When you log into your bank, it's also used to verify that information is coming from a reliable source. So when your phone updates, when it says, please download this new update, you want to make sure that that is really coming from Apple or whatever other company owns your phone. And the reason you can be sure that information is coming from a reliable source is public key cryptography.
So basically, it's baked into everything we do these days.
Yeah. Public key cryptography, you're using many, many times a day.
And so the prospect of losing that security, you talk to a bunch of experts in the field about this. What does the world without this look like?
I think most experts don't genuinely feel that we will have a world without this cryptography, because quantum computers can break this type of cryptography, but only larger quantum computers than we have right now. This is a problem about larger quantum computers in the future, and we know how to solve it. We actually have new kinds or alternative kinds, actually many of them are not new, but alternative kinds of public key cryptography that quantum computers cannot break, or at least we don't know how to break them with a quantum computer. So we know the solution to this problem. We know how to change our systems so that a quantum computer is not the threat that it is. But changing systems is very, very hard. There are a lot of people and institutions working to shift everything over, but it's a very long and slow process. And the hope is that it will happen before quantum computers can really break our cryptography.
So on that, the sort of timeline for this, for somebody who's sort of been around long enough, it reminds me of a thing that used to exist, which was this sort of specter of massive disruption and crash in the Y2K bug, which was a software issue in 2000 where all these old computers, which, had been coded with the date as 2 digits, not 4 in terms of the year, to save space because, computers were large, but also not great with storage. When that was supposed to roll over to the year 2000, there was an assumption that everything would sort of fall apart. That didn't happen largely. But now we have this thing called Y2Q. So could you tell us a little bit about what that is? Is it just kind of a fun way to talk about this new thing?
So a information security company sort of came up with this idea of Y2Q, year 2 quantum, as an analogy with Y2K. It's not as precise because we don't know when a quantum computer will come. We knew exactly when the year 2000 would come, but we don't know when there will be a large enough quantum computer to break cryptography. But they're trying to point out that we should be looking forward to that date, whenever it is, and we should be making all of our changes now before that. We should be concerned, especially because there's this uncertainty about when a large enough quantum computer will be built, and we should be making changes now. There's an additional reason to change cryptography now before the problem arises. And that's because a future quantum computer could retroactively decrypt messages that are sent now using standard cryptography of today, the things that your computer is doing right now. That's not such a concern in many applications. For example, if you send your credit card number online, if a quantum computer is invented, or a large enough quantum computer is invented 20, 30 years from now, you probably have a different credit card number, so that's probably not a concern. But hospitals are storing medical records or sending medical records using this kind of cryptography. Governments are sending national security, very highly classified information using this kind of cryptography. And that information you probably want to be secret for more than 20 or 30 years. So it's kind of alarming that in 20 or 30 years, you could decrypt anything that's sent securely now. So we want to really change over these systems now to keep things secure for the long term.
Do you get a sense of where a computer like that might be built? Is it on the horizon? Are there candidates out there? Are there rogue governments building large quantum computers?
Yes, there is, of course, this possibility that someone somewhere has a quantum computer to solve these problems, but that seems very, very unlikely. I think most experts feel that we would know about such a thing. When you ask experts in quantum computing, what will a future quantum computer look like and what is the timeline, their answers are quite varied and often include a lot of uncertainty. But I think that uncertainty is part of what makes cryptographers nervous. Cryptographers need to prepare for quantum computers, and even the experts in quantum computing can't exactly tell you when it's coming and how. So that uncertainty makes the issue all the more important to address right now.
It's a system that pretty much holds up our digital society as it exists. So probably reasonable caution and worry there.
Yeah. There is movement to change these things. So right now, the National Institute for Standards and Technology, NIST, is standardizing new types of public key cryptography, which will be implemented in the future in all systems. That may take a long time, but they will be implemented. And we hope that those new types of public key cryptography cannot be broken by a standard computer or a quantum computer. But there's actually never a guarantee in cryptography. No one knows for sure that those are secure. So it's always a little bit of a cat and mouse game with cryptography.
Well, it's a really fascinating subject, and it seems incredibly important on the long term, maybe, but incredibly important to everything. So thank you for reporting on it. It's really fascinating. And if you want to learn even more about quantum cryptography in the coming issues, read Kelsey's story in the February issue of the magazine, where you can also learn more about Bob, Alice, and Secret Brownies. I'm just going to leave that there and let you figure it out. scientificamerican.com. Kelsey, thanks so much for coming on the podcast and talking to us about it.
Yeah, thanks for talking to me.
Kelsey Houston Edwards is a mathematician and journalist. She formerly wrote and hosted the online show PBS Infinite Series. Science Quickly is produced by me, Jeff Del Vizio, and Talika Bose. Like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And for more science news, go to scientificamerican.com. For Science Quickly, this is Jeff Del Vizio.
Don't you wish your life came with a warning app?
Stop. That dog does not want to be petted.
A heads up before something bad happens.
You should not send that text.
Uh-oh. Life doesn't always give you time to change the outcome, but prediabetes does. With early diagnosis and a few healthy changes, you can reverse prediabetes and prevent or delay type 2 diabetes. To learn your risk, take the 1-minute test today at doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its prediabetes awareness partners.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
You're listening to the American Democracy Minute, keeping your government by and for the people. The weekend before the New Hampshire presidential primary, some Democratic voters received robocalls with an AI-generated voice sounding like President Joe Biden, suggesting that they not vote. February 6th, the New Hampshire Attorney General and Federal Communications Commission announced actions against the companies allegedly responsible. In a press conference Tuesday, State Attorney General John Formella confirmed President Joe Biden's voice was generated by AI and had reached between 5,000 and 25,000 voters. The voice told voters,
"Voting this Tuesday only enables the Republicans in their quest to elect Donald Trump again. Your vote makes a difference in November, not this Tuesday."
Joe Biden's name was not on the ballot due to a dispute between New Hampshire state law requiring it to be the first primary and the National Democratic Committee. A robust write-in campaign had been launched in New Hampshire, apparently what the robocall was intended to suppress. While no charges have yet been filed, Formella said cease and desist and document preservation letters had been sent to the suspected senders, Arlington, Texas-based Life Corporation and Walter Monk, and the telecom company which transmitted the calls, Lingo Telecom. The FCC demanded that Lingo cease all illegal robocall activity. Several state and federal statutes were violated and charges are likely. We have a link to the AG statement and more at AmericanDemocracyMinute.org. I'm Brian Beal.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1919. That was the day copper miners in Butte, Montana went out on strike. Mine owners announced a $1 a day wage cut when copper prices slumped in the financial markets. Swayed by the power of the Seattle General Strike then in progress, miners associated with the industrial workers of the world and the Metal Mine Workers Union Local 800 formed their own Soldiers, Sailors, and Workers Council. They issued a call for a general strike. For days, area trade unionists honored picket lines, left their jobs, and held meetings to debate joining a general strike. The streetcar workers shut down public transportation for 5 days. Soldiers returning from the war helped to man the picket lines. The labor paper Butte Daily Bulletin reported the post-war economy had left returning war heroes penniless and working in dangerous mines. While solidarity was unanimous among workers, their unions had yet to pass formal resolutions. Immediately, Montana's Governor Sam V. Stewart called in the 44th Infantry to crush the strike. Infantrymen bayoneted 9 strikers when they tried to stop the anti-labor Butte Daily Post from being distributed. Spirits were high by the end of the first week as official voting began. Then the streetcar men went back to work, citing no grievances with their employer. Then the engineers followed. Finally, the IBEW caved. They worried the engineers would take their jobs as they had done in the 1917 strike. The IWW and Local 800 called off the strike, fearing continuation would be fatal. Though most of the troops were soon withdrawn, one company stayed to ensure labor peace at the local water and electric works. Butte would remain under federal military occupation until the end of 1920.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 40 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting highs in the mid-40s with winds light and variable, then overcast tonight with lows in the mid-30s, winds light and variable, and then cloudy skies tomorrow on travel day for me. A few flurries or snow showers possible, how dare they. Highs will be in the mid-40s, winds light and variable. Looks like pollen is still rated as none here in our little hamlet of Rogue River, Oregon. The air quality index for the region is in the good range at 25 parts per million, and that daytime UV index is low at level 2. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.05 inches. Visibility is at 7 miles, and relative humidity is at 99%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. That is the Weather Underground. It is. London is 51 degrees and cloudy. Paris is 55 degrees with rain. Rome is 60 degrees, partly cloudy with a wind advisory, meaning heavy winds could impact critical infrastructure. Bagram is 32 degrees and clear. Kyiv is 31 and cloudy. Hong Kong is 50 degrees and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 42 and cloudy. Melbourne, Victoria, Australia is 66 and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 44 degrees and sunny with a beach flooding advisory. Chicago, Illinois is 52 degrees and sunny with a wind advisory. And New York, New York is 46 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. At the World Desk of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche. here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. Former Czech populist Prime Minister Andrej Babis lost his final appeal in Slovakia yesterday, Wednesday, in a case concerning allegations that he collaborated with communist-era secret police in what was then Czechoslovakia. Babis, who was born in Slovakia, was suing the Institute for National Memory, which holds part of his secret police files following the division of Czechoslovakia into the Czech Republic and Slovakia in 1993. In a decision on February 1st, but only published yesterday, Wednesday, Slovakia's constitutional court, the highest court in the land, upheld the rulings by lower courts, dismissing the case. Some of the files were destroyed, but the Institute said those that still exist contain evidence that Babis was an agent under the code named Burris from 1982. Babis has vehemently denied that. The regional court in the capital Bratislava originally rejected the lawsuit in 2018, but the Constitutional Court ordered a retrial, saying the Institute could not be sued and the respondent should be the Slovak Interior Ministry. The regional court dismissed the case again in 2022, followed by a similar ruling from the Supreme Court in September of last year. Babis challenged that with a complaint filed with the Constitutional Court, whose verdict completed the case. Babis, a billionaire, is currently in opposition after his populist centrist movement lost the 2021 parliamentary election. He was running to become the Czech president in the election for the largely ceremonial post in January last year, but lost to Petr Pavel, a retired army general.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Staff at the World Desk of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The European Union yesterday, Wednesday, launched legal action against Hungary's right-wing government over a new law that allows authorities to investigate and prosecute people accused of undermining the country's sovereignty. The Sovereignty Protection Act took effect in December. It created a government authority with the power to gather information on any groups or individuals that benefit from foreign funding and influence public debate. Hungary's secret services can assist in the authorities' investigations. The law allows prison terms of up to 3 years for anyone convicted of violating it. Opponents compare the act to Russia's foreign agent law. They say its broad language can be used to arbitrarily target government critics. The European Commission, which monitors the application of legislation across the 27 EU member countries, said Hungary's measure violates several provisions of the bloc's law, and that it sent a letter of formal notice to Budapest, the first step in legal action. The Commission raised concerns that the law threatens EU democratic values, undermines the principle of democracy and the electoral rights of European citizens, and also infringes on other fundamental rights, including the right to privacy, personal data protection, and freedom of expression and association. Hungary has 2 months to respond to the letter and address the Commission's concerns. and we know exactly what they'll respond to. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but we will be meeting up here tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.